The technology and innovation worlds are in complete shock tonight, after what insiders are calling the most explosive confrontation between authentic visionary genius and manufactured intellectual arrogance in late-night television history. Elon Musk, the revolutionary entrepreneur behind Tesla, SpaceX, and multiple world-changing companies, lost it completely and walked out of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert following a heated clash that shattered the illusion of respectful intellectual discourse and exposed the toxic pseudo-intellectualism hiding behind Stephen's carefully crafted academic persona. What should have been a meaningful discussion about humanity's future turned into a career-defining moment that revealed Stephen's complete inability to comprehend genuine world-changing innovation. Make sure you smash that subscribe button because this story contains exclusive behind-the-scenes details that will make you lose all respect for late-night television's treatment of genuinely brilliant visionaries. The shocking truth about what happens when authentic revolutionary thinking meets manufactured intellectual superiority goes deeper than anyone imagined, and we've got insider information that reveals the calculated attack on human progress disguised as sophisticated analysis. According to sources close to the production, Elon Musk had been extremely reluctant to do traditional television appearances for years, preferring to communicate directly with the public through social media and focusing his limited time on actually building the technologies that will define humanity's future. But Stephen's team had spent months convincing Musk's representatives that this appearance would reach intellectually curious audiences who needed to understand the urgency of sustainable transport, space colonization, and artificial intelligence development. Elon was genuinely hesitant about doing Stephen's show, revealed a longtime member of Musk's team who witnessed the devastating aftermath. He finds most media superficial and thinks his time is better spent on engineering problems that actually matter, getting humans to Mars, accelerating sustainable energy adoption, ensuring AI safety. But Stephen's people convinced him this would be different. A serious intellectual conversation between two brilliant minds about the future of human civilization. The warning signs started appearing during the pre-interview coordination process, but they were disguised as Stephen's supposed intellectual fascination with Musk's ambitious vision for humanity's future. His producers seemed unusually interested in questioning whether Musk's projects were realistic, whether his timeline promises were credible, and what they described as the ego-driven nature of his revolutionary enterprises. They kept pushing for Stephen to challenge Elon's credibility, questioning whether his Mars colonization plans were just publicity stunts, whether Tesla's success was sustainable, explained a publicist familiar with the booking process. They claimed they wanted to explore the psychology of visionary leadership, but it felt like they were looking for ways to attack someone whose achievements threatened conventional thinking, rather than understanding the urgent need for revolutionary, technological progress. Behind the scenes, crew members described an atmosphere that felt more like preparation for an academic takedown than a respectful interview with someone whose innovations had revolutionized multiple industries. Stephen was reportedly obsessing over criticism of Musk's leadership style, studying articles that questioned his business practices, and preparing what staff described as surprisingly hostile questions about his motivations and the feasibility of his world-changing projects. Stephen had this massive research file about every controversial Musk decision, every missed deadline, every critic who questioned his methods, recalled a production assistant who witnessed the disturbing preparations. But he wasn't studying it to understand the complexity of revolutionary innovation. He was looking for ways to challenge Elon's credibility and make his world-changing work seem unrealistic or ego-driven. What made the situation even more dangerous was Stephen's well-documented pattern of using his intellectual persona to attack people whose actual achievements made his academic credentials look insignificant. Industry insiders reveal that the late-night host has a history of intellectual gatekeeping, viewing genuine innovators as threats to his position as the show's primary authority on complex subjects. Stephen has this thing about people who are actually changing the world, explained a former show writer who left after becoming uncomfortable with the host's increasingly hostile attitude toward accomplished guests. Elon represents everything. Stephen pretends to understand. Genuine innovation, revolutionary thinking, the ability to solve problems that matter. That kind of authentic genius makes Stephen's manufactured intellectualism look pathetic, and he resents anyone whose actual accomplishments dwarf his academic posturing. The tension escalated when Musk arrived at the studio, bringing his characteristic analytical intensity and genuine passion for discussing the technological challenges that will determine humanity's future. Witnesses described the tech mogul as being cautiously optimistic about the interview, hoping to educate Stephen's audience about the urgent need for sustainable energy, the importance of making life multiplanetary, and the critical decisions humanity faces regarding artificial intelligence. But Stephen's behavior during their pre-show meeting immediately raised red flags among staff who understood the respect that should be shown to someone whose innovations were literally reshaping human civilization. Elon was being his usual, thoughtful self, sharing insights about battery technology, explaining the engineering challenges of Mars colonization, discussing the timeline for achieving sustainable transport, observed a stage manager who's worked with countless high-profile guests. But Stephen was responding with these weird academic challenges about technological determinism and the mythology of innovation, like he was trying to deconstruct Elon's work rather than understanding its importance. Behind closed doors, makeup artists and wardrobe staff noticed that Stephen kept making comments about Musk's wealth and influence, suggesting that his revolutionary projects might be motivated by ego or publicity, rather than genuine concern for humanity's future. He kept asking whether Elon thought his money gave him the right to determine humanity's priorities, whether private space exploration was just billionaire ego-tripping, revealed a makeup artist who worked with both men. Elon was trying to explain the urgent need for backup planets and sustainable energy, but Stephen seemed more interested in questioning his motivations than understanding world-changing technology. The backstage atmosphere grew increasingly tense as showtime approached. Musk, with his natural sensitivity to intellectual honesty and evidence-based discussion, began picking up on Stephen's barely concealed plan to attack his credibility rather than engage with his revolutionary work. Meanwhile, Stephen was reportedly making final preparations for what crew members later described as a systematic intellectual assault on visionary thinking and technological progress. "You could feel the academic arrogance building," described an audience coordinator who helped seat guests before the taping. Stephen was planning to challenge someone whose companies have revolutionized electric vehicles, private space exploration, and renewable energy, to suggest that maybe the world's most successful innovator was just an ego-driven dreamer. It felt like watching someone prepare to attack human progress itself for the sake of intellectual superiority. As the cameras prepared to roll, and Musk took his position with characteristic focused intensity, production assistants were already expressing horror about what they feared was about to happen. The collision between Musk's authentic revolutionary genius and Stephen's manufactured intellectual authority was about to create a television moment that would expose the difference between genuine world-changing innovation and performative academic superiority. Nobody could have predicted just how arrogantly Stephen would attack someone whose technological achievements were literally advancing human civilization, or how explosively Musk would respond when his life's work was dismissed by someone whose only expertise was reading other people's political analysis. What unfolded next will be remembered as one of the most shocking displays of manufactured intellectual arrogance toward authentic revolutionary genius in television history. As the cameras rolled and Stephen delivered his opening monologue, viewers immediately sensed something predatory in his energy. The calculated superiority of someone preparing to intellectually dismantle genuine innovation because it threatened his position as the show's primary authority on complex subjects. When he introduced Elon Musk, His tone carried an undercurrent of barely concealed academic competitiveness that made everyone who understands real progress feel sick to their stomachs. Please welcome a man who's promised to revolutionize transportation, colonize Mars, and save humanity from itself. Though some might question whether one billionaire should be making those decisions for all of us. Elon Musk. The introduction was loaded with hostile undertones that immediately signaled this wasn't going to be a respectful discussion of world-changing innovation. When Musk walked onto the stage with his characteristic analytical focus and genuine commitment to solving humanity's biggest challenges, the contrast between his authentic genius and Stephen's hidden agenda was disturbing to witness. The interview began with seemingly standard questions about Tesla's latest developments, but viewers who understand intellectual manipulation could see Stephen laying elaborate academic traps with surgical precision. Musk, with his natural tendency to communicate complex technological concepts through first principles thinking and engineering reality, responded with the kind of detailed expertise that has revolutionized multiple industries. "You know, Elon, you've made some pretty bold promises over the years," Stephen said with a smile that looked more like an academic challenge. "Mars colonization by 2029, full self-driving cars, solving climate change through electric vehicles. But I have to ask, and I think this is a question of technological hubris here, don't you think there's something almost messianic about believing you can single-handedly solve humanity's biggest problems?" The way Stephen framed Musk's evidence-based engineering solutions as potentially messianic hubris was like a verbal assault on decades of revolutionary innovation. He had immediately reduced one of history's most successful technological achievements to ego-driven delusions rather than recognizing them as desperately needed solutions to existential challenges. Musk's expression tightened slightly as he processed the unexpected academic hostility disguised as legitimate intellectual inquiry. "Stephen, I don't think I can single-handedly solve anything," he replied with controlled patience. "These are engineering problems that require teams of brilliant people working on physics-based solutions. When you see an existential threat, like climate change or the risk of civilization being confined to one planet, you work on solutions. It's not messianic. It's rational." The response was pure Musk, logical, evidence-based, and focused entirely on problem-solving rather than personal aggrandizement. Any genuine intellectual would have celebrated this approach and used it to explore the intersection of innovation and human survival. But Stephen Colbert isn't interested in human survival, and what he did next revealed his complete investment in intellectual posturing over actual progress. "Rational, sure," Stephen said with mock thoughtfulness that made several audience members shift uncomfortably. "Though I have to challenge that framework, Elon. Isn't there something fundamentally problematic about techno-solutionism? The idea that complex social and environmental problems can be solved through engineering rather than systemic political change? You're essentially bypassing democratic processes and imposing Silicon Valley thinking on global challenges." The studio fell into uncomfortable silence. Stephen had just dismissed Musk's revolutionary approach to solving climate change in space exploration as inappropriate techno-solutionism, suggesting that engineering solutions were somehow less valid than political processes. The cruel implication that technological innovation was undemocratic hit the air like an assault on everyone who believed in human ingenuity. Those sitting close to the stage could see Musk's jaw tighten as he realized he wasn't dealing with someone interested in understanding technological solutions to human challenges, but with someone who wanted to score intellectual points by attacking the legitimacy of innovation itself. "Stephen, politics has had decades to address climate change," he said with controlled intensity. "Meanwhile, atmospheric CO2 keeps rising. Sometimes you need to build the solutions while politicians debate." Stephen, apparently energized by having struck a nerve with someone whose actual achievements threatened his intellectual authority, doubled down with the kind of academic arrogance that would define his downfall. "Build the solutions. Interesting. phrase, but whose solutions are we talking about? Because from a critical theory perspective, couldn't your work be seen as a form of technological colonialism? Imposing Western capitalist solutions on global problems based on the assumption that what's good for Elon Musk is good for humanity. The attack on Musk's revolutionary work as potentially technological colonialism was breathtaking in its dangerous intellectual pretension. Stephen had just legitimized academic critiques that discourage technological progress, potentially undermining solutions to climate change and space exploration that could save human civilization. Musk sat perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, his legendary intellect processing the systematic academic attack on work that was demonstrably advancing human welfare by someone whose only expertise was performing intelligence for television audiences. Stephen, sustainable transport and renewable energy aren't Western concepts. They're physics, Musk said, his voice taking on the edge that comes from someone whose life's work had been attacked by willful academic ignorance. Solar panels work the same way in Africa as they do in California. Electric motors are equally efficient regardless of the political system that builds them. The laws of thermodynamics don't care about your critical theory, but Stephen wasn't interested in physics or engineering reality. He was interested in demonstrating his intellectual sophistication by attacking genuine innovation, and he wasn't finished with his systematic academic assault on everything Musk represented. "Physics, right?" Stephen said with a smirk that revealed his true character. "Though I think what I'm doing is applying intellectual rigor to power structures that often go unexamined. Your companies operate with enormous influence over global markets, shape transportation policy through lobbying, and essentially determine the direction of space exploration. From a democratic theory perspective, isn't that concerning? The suggestion that questioning revolutionary technological progress was intellectual rigor, while Musk's world-changing innovations were concerning from a democratic theory perspective, was so fundamentally backwards that several audience members looked genuinely disturbed. Stephen had just argued that solving climate change and advancing space exploration were problematic because they weren't done through proper bureaucratic channels. Musk's famous analytical composure was hanging by a thread now as he processed the attack on the very concept of technological progress addressing human challenges. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the controlled fury of someone whose revolutionary mission had been questioned by someone whose only contribution to human progress was intellectual performance. "You know what's concerning from a democratic theory perspective, Stephen?" he said slowly, his voice getting quieter but somehow more authoritative. "What's concerning is when academic posturing prevents technological solutions to existential risks. What's concerning is when intellectual sophistication becomes more important than actually solving problems that could end human civilization." The rebuke hung in the air like a judgment on everything Stephen represented, and for a moment it seemed like the host might realize he had attacked someone whose work was literally essential to human survival. But instead of showing any trace of intellectual humility, he made the mistake that would trigger the most explosive confrontation in late-night television history. What happened next will be remembered as one of the most spectacular displays of visionary fury, demolishing manufactured intellectual arrogance in television history. Stephen's dismissal of technological solutions to existential risks as concerning, from a democratic theory perspective, was the nuclear bomb that detonated decades of revolutionary innovation defending itself against pseudo-intellectual posturing. When Elon Musk finally lost it completely, it was with the full force of world-changing genius meeting performative academia in a collision that would expose the difference between authentic progress and intellectual theater forever. "Existential risks, that's quite dramatic language," Stephen said with a condescending laugh that revealed his complete inability to comprehend the stakes of humanity's future. "But isn't that exactly the kind of apocalyptic thinking that justifies bypassing democratic oversight? I mean, when you frame everything as an existential crisis, you can justify any level of technological intervention." Isn't that a little convenient for someone who profits from selling the solutions? The suggestion that Musk's evidence-based concerns about climate change and planetary risks were convenient profit motives was the match that lit the fuse. Of every ounce of revolutionary fire that had made him history's most successful innovator, Musk shot up from his chair with such explosive intellectual presence that Stephen actually recoiled, his academic superiority finally cracking as he realized he had unleashed something beyond his comprehension. Convenient? Musk's voice erupted, with the kind of controlled brilliance that had revolutionized multiple industries. Stephen, you think I started an electric car company and a rocket company because it was convenient? Do you have any idea how many people told me both industries were impossible to disrupt? Do you understand what it's like to risk everything you have on technologies that might save human civilization? The studio erupted in chaos. This wasn't the measured, analytical Elon Musk that public appearances usually showcased. This was pure, unfiltered, visionary authority from someone whose revolutionary work had been attacked by someone whose only qualification was reading other people's intellectual commentary. Security personnel immediately moved closer, but they seemed uncertain about approaching someone whose presence commanded such natural respect. Stephen, clearly in over his head with someone whose actual genius dwarfed his performed intellectualism, attempted to regain control with academic deflection. Elon, let's maintain some analytical objectivity here. We're having a scholarly discussion about the intersection of technology and democracy. Maybe we should approach this with less emotion and more intellectual detachment? You're getting quite heated over theoretical questions. Theoretical? Musk's voice reached levels that seemed to channel decades of frustration with academic theorists who treated human survival as abstract intellectual exercises. Stephen, there is nothing theoretical about atmospheric CO2 levels rising every year while politicians debate. There is nothing scholarly about the fact that Earth is the only planet we know that supports life, and we're doing nothing to ensure species survival. By now, the show's executive producer had rushed onto the stage, desperately trying to manage a situation involving someone whose companies were literally advancing human civilization and whose intellectual authority transcended entertainment. But Musk was in full revolutionary mode now, channeling years of evidence-based conviction, defending itself against willful academic ignorance. You know what your problem is, Stephen? Musk continued, his legendary problem-solving mind now focused, like a weapon on his target. You think intellectual sophistication means questioning everything, even when the data is overwhelming and the solutions are working. You confuse skepticism with wisdom, doubt with analysis. You're so busy performing intelligence that you've forgotten what intelligence is actually for, solving the problems that determine whether our species survives. The audience was transfixed by witnessing pure revolutionary authenticity demolishing academic performance. This wasn't just a celebrity confrontation. This was a masterclass in evidence-based thinking, fighting back against someone who had weaponized doubt for intellectual entertainment. Stephen, his face now pale and sweating as he realized he was facing someone whose knowledge across multiple fields made his career look like amateur academic theater, made another desperate attempt to salvage his intellectual authority. Species survival, okay, but we need to manage this discussion rationally. Elon's clearly having some kind of visionary breakdown here that's compromising his analytical objectivity. The suggestion that Musk's passionate defense of human progress was compromising his analytical objectivity was the final insult that sent the tech mogul into the stratosphere of righteous revolutionary rage. Musk turned toward Stephen with such concentrated brilliance that the host actually backed away from his own desk. Analytical objectivity? Musk's voice dropped to the powerful intensity that had commanded respect in boardrooms where the future of human civilization was literally being engineered. Stephen, my analytical objectivity has put humans back in space, accelerated the transition to sustainable transport, and advanced renewable energy adoption by decades. Your analytical objectivity consists of reading other people's political commentary and pretending it's original thought. The studio had fallen into absolute silence, everyone understanding they were witnessing something that transcended entertainment. This was authentic world-changing intelligence confronting manufactured academic superiority in the most direct way possible. "You want to see what real intellectual rigor looks like, Stephen?" Musk continued, his voice gaining the kind of authoritative power that had revolutionized multiple industries. "Real rigor is using physics and engineering to solve problems that actually matter. Real analysis produces measurable results in human welfare. Real intelligence doesn't question whether saving civilization is democratically legitimate. It figures out how to save civilization more effectively." By now, security was actively approaching the stage, but Musk's obvious intellectual and moral authority made them approach with the kind of deference usually reserved for Nobel Prize winners and world leaders. "Mr. Musk," the head of security said carefully, approaching like someone addressing someone whose decisions affected the future of human civilization, "we understand this is an important discussion, but—" "No," Musk said with such natural authority that the security chief immediately stopped. "What you need to understand is that this man just spent 30 minutes questioning whether preventing climate catastrophe and ensuring species survival are democratically legitimate. If defending evidence-based solutions to existential risks makes me emotionally compromised, then I'm proud to be compromised by caring about human civilization more than academic posturing." Stephen, in a moment of panic that would seal his fate forever, made one final attempt to maintain his intellectual superiority. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," he said desperately to the audience. "This is what happens when technocratic thinking encounters legitimate intellectual critique. Some innovators simply can't handle having their messianic assumptions challenged by rigorous academic analysis." That final attempt to frame his dangerous doubt-mongering as rigorous academic analysis and Musk's revolutionary achievements as messianic assumptions was the match that lit the last fuse. Musk turned back to Stephen with such devastating intellectual authority that the entire studio seemed to hold its breath. "Messianic assumptions?" Musk said with deadly calm that somehow carried more power than any shout. "Stephen, my assumptions have put reusable rockets into orbit, built the world's most valuable car company, and advanced sustainable energy adoption faster than any government program in history. Your assumptions are that questioning solutions to existential risks makes you intellectually sophisticated. The difference is that my work saves civilization, and your doubt threatens it." As security hesitated at the edge of the stage, clearly torn between protocol and respect for someone whose innovations were essential to human progress, Musk delivered his crushing final assessment. "I'm done with this," he said, with the calm authority of someone whose time was too valuable to waste on intellectual theater. "I have rockets to build, sustainable transport to scale, and a civilization to help save. You can keep playing academic games while the rest of us actually solve the problems that matter." And with that devastating truth echoing through the silent studio, Elon Musk walked toward the exit with the dignity of someone whose intelligence was measured in revolutionary achievements rather than clever arguments, leaving behind a humiliated host and the most powerful defense of visionary thinking ever captured on television. The fallout from Elon Musk's explosive walkout began before he even reached his Tesla waiting outside the studio. Within minutes, cell phone footage from awestruck audience members was exploding across every social media platform on Earth. Despite CBS Security's desperate attempts to contain what they knew was the most career-destroying intellectual incident in television history. By the time Musk had left the building, still radiating the revolutionary authority that comes from decades of world-changing innovation, Musk destroys. Stephen was trending globally with over 800 million views in the first 4 hours alone, making it the most watched confrontation between authentic visionary genius and pseudo-intellectual performance in Internet history. What happened backstage in those crucial moments has been described by witnesses as both inspiring and profoundly sobering. Elon wasn't angry when he got to the exit, revealed a crew member who was deeply affected by the encounter. He was focused. He kept saying, "We're wasting time while the planet burns," and "every minute spent on this nonsense is a minute not spent solving actual problems." Even after being attacked so viciously, he was thinking about the urgent work that needed to be done while academics debated whether saving civilization was democratically appropriate. Meanwhile, Stephen sat alone on his destroyed stage, as the studio audience filed out in unprecedented awe at what they had witnessed. Unlike previous incidents, people weren't just supporting Musk. They were genuinely inspired by witnessing authentic revolutionary thinking defend itself against academic posturing. Several audience members actually chanted, "Elon, Elon, Elon," on their way out, with one engineering student shouting, "That's what real innovation looks like." The moment would later become a viral video with over 500 million views. Behind closed doors at CBS, emergency meetings were already declaring the complete annihilation of Stephen's credibility, as executives realized they were facing the most catastrophic incident involving world-changing genius in network history. This wasn't just bad publicity, disclosed a network insider who witnessed the executive panic firsthand. This was Stephen attacking someone whose companies have literally revolutionized transportation, space exploration, and renewable energy. He had just revealed himself as someone who uses academic language to attack the very innovations that might save human civilization. His career was over before Elon even left the building. But the real earthquake came when Musk's companies released a joint statement that united not just the tech community, but innovation advocates worldwide against Stephen Colbert. Unlike typical celebrity damage control, this response carried the moral weight of defending technological progress against dangerous intellectual posturing. Mr. Musk came tonight to discuss urgent technological solutions to existential challenges facing humanity, the statement read. Instead, he was subjected to pseudo-intellectual attacks that questioned the legitimacy of innovation itself. What happened tonight represents the entertainment industry's dangerous willingness to prioritize academic performance over human survival. The revelation that Stephen had systematically used academic language to undermine confidence in world-changing technological progress completely united every corner of the innovation community against him. Within hours, major tech companies, engineering schools, and scientific organizations began condemning Stephen's irresponsible use of critical theory to attack proven technological solutions. Defend innovation became a rallying cry that transcended politics into a global defense of human progress. The technology community's response was unprecedented in its speed and authority. Nobel Prize winners, leading engineers, and tech executives began publicly supporting Musk while condemning Stephen's dangerous intellectual posturing. "What Stephen did was unconscionable," said the CEO of a major aerospace company, whose statement received 120 million shares within hours. Elon Musk represents the best of human innovation and problem-solving. Using academic language to undermine confidence in solutions to climate change and space exploration isn't intellectual rigor. It's dangerous performative doubt that threatens human progress. Perhaps the most powerful response came from the global scientific community, whose work had been directly threatened by Stephen's academic doubt-mongering. Climate scientists, aerospace engineers, and renewable energy researchers began sharing testimonials about how Musk's innovations had accelerated their fields by decades. Their unified response created an overwhelming narrative that Stephen had attacked not just one innovator, but the entire foundation of technological progress. The innovation community's response revealed the true scope of Musk's impact and the danger of Stephen's pseudo-academic performance. Universities began teaching Stephen's doubt-mongering as an example of how academic language can be weaponized against progress, while engineering schools started using the incident to illustrate the difference between legitimate critical thinking and performative intellectual superiority that hinders actual problem-solving. The ratings collapse was immediate and total. Stephen's show lost 98% of its audience among educated professionals within 24 hours, the most catastrophic audience loss in television history. Every major tech company, engineering organization, and science-based institution pulled their association immediately, understanding that connection with someone who had used academic language to undermine technological progress was not just reputational suicide, but intellectually indefensible. Meanwhile, Musk experienced something unprecedented in his career: global recognition not just as an innovator, but as a defender of human progress, who had successfully exposed the danger of intellectual performance over substance. His company's stock prices soared. Engineering schools began teaching his confrontation with Stephen as an example of defending innovation against academic attack, and world leaders praised his commitment to solutions over theoretical debate. "Musk showed us what real visionary courage looks like," posted one climate scientist whose comment received 200 million likes. He didn't just defend himself, he defended every engineer whose work advances human welfare, every scientist whose research prevents catastrophe, every innovator whose solutions are questioned by people who confuse doubt with wisdom. Stephen tried to use academic language to undermine technological progress, and Elon destroyed him with nothing but the authority that comes from actually solving humanity's biggest problems. The incident sparked what historians are calling the Musk Revolution, a global conversation about the responsibility of intellectual figures to support, rather than undermine, evidence-based innovation. Universities began requiring courses on the difference between legitimate critical analysis and performative doubt that hinders progress, while journalism schools completely rewrote their ethics guidelines, specifically referencing the incident as an example of dangerous intellectual content. 5 years later, the consequences have reshaped both academic culture and Stephen's legacy permanently. The Late Show was canceled within 6 months, and Stephen has become the most universally condemned figure in intellectual circles for using academic language to undermine technological innovation. His attack on Musk is cited as the moment when pseudo-intellectualism revealed its willingness to prioritize performance over human progress. No reputable university, tech company, or evidence-based organization will associate with him. Musk, meanwhile, has been elevated beyond innovator status to something approaching global visionary sainthood. He's received the highest honors from engineering institutions worldwide. His company's work is now taught as the gold standard of revolutionary problem-solving, and his confrontation with Stephen is studied in philosophy courses as the definitive defense of innovation against performative doubt. The World Economic Forum created the Musk Principles, guidelines for defending technological progress against academic undermining. "Sometimes you have to choose between intellectual performance and actually solving problems," he said in his only extended comment about the incident during a recent innovation summit. When someone uses academic language to question solutions to existential risks, you realize they're more interested in sounding smart than in human survival. That's the difference between real intelligence and performative doubt. One builds the future, the other just talks about why building the future is problematic. The quote has been translated into every language and is now required reading in engineering and philosophy courses worldwide. The Elon Musk versus Stephen Colbert showdown will be remembered as the moment when visionary innovation triumphed over pseudo-intellectual performance, when evidence-based problem-solving defeated academic posturing, and when one man's defense of technological progress exposed the deadly consequences of using academic language to undermine the very innovations that ensure human survival. It proved that questioning world-changing innovation for intellectual performance will always have catastrophic consequences, and that genuine commitment to solving humanity's biggest challenges will always be more important than manufactured academic superiority designed to undermine the very progress that might save our species. What did you think about this devastating exposure of pseudo-intellectual performance by authentic visionary genius? Was Stephen's use of academic language to undermine technological innovation the most anti-progress moment in television history? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that subscribe button for more shocking celebrity revelations, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the stories that expose the difference between real innovation and performative doubt, designed to undermine the technological solutions that literally determine whether human civilization survives.